Okay, so we have the 2020 AP Human Geography exam, and I have some information to tell you guys that was released by the College Board on April 3rd. So feel free to take notes as you need to, but you guys can refer back to this anytime. So, question number 1, when is the test? The test is Tuesday, May 12th at 4 p.m. Or excuse me, at 2 p.m. It's going to be 45 minutes, and I'll go over how that's going to work on some of the next slides. You'll need to be logging in at 1:30 p.m. to access the online testing system and get everything set up. So it might take some of you a little bit longer. Just kind of imagine how long sometimes it takes you to get logged into College Board. And imagine that there's going to be millions of students logging in on the same date and the same time. So it's probably going to be ultra bogged down. So maybe even a little bit before 1:30 is when we should try to get that done. The makeup test date is June 1st at noon. I do not recommend this test date because the anticipation of that is always that it is more difficult because the answers have been released through social media to students prior to that point. However, if you cannot make the May 12th test date at home, or you're having major Wi-Fi issues, or something comes through, you would be able to take it on June 1st. What do I need to take the exam? Basically, you can take your phone, take it on a phone, tablet, laptop, desktop computer, whatever you use. Obviously, you need to have Wi-Fi service. It would be ideal if you could use something that has a keyboard so that you can type in your responses. There is an option for you to upload a picture of a written response. However, I would like to discourage you guys from doing that. There are some of you that just don't have awesome handwriting, for one, and typically handwriting can take a little bit longer. So if you haven't nailed how to type on a keyboard yet, you need to probably start practicing that so that you guys can make sure that you're getting those typed answers in there quickly, since it is going to be a much shortened time frame that we're used to. So you guys can ask me if you guys have any questions about this. Okay, next slide. What is the format of our exam? There are going to be 2 FRQs, 2 free response questions. The first question is going to be 25 minutes. It's going to have 2 stimulus, and it will be 55% of our exam score. And then we will have 5 minutes to upload our response. That is not included in your 25 minutes. So it will actually stop and not allow you to progress, and it forces you to upload. However, you guys will be able to see a timer on your screen unless you choose to hide that feature. I don't want any of you guys to hide that feature. We need to make sure that we're practicing with this, and we're going to be using the progress checks. We're going to try to do more of those progress checks on the College Board's website to kind of get practice with shortening our response time, as well as getting used to typing everything and getting used to the types of questions. Question number 2 will only be 15-minute timed. It's only going to have 1 stimulus. It's going to be 45% of your exam score, and again, you'll have you'll have 5 minutes to upload. Looks like I made an error on that. So separate from the 15 minutes. And again, imagine all of us, millions of you, are going to be uploading this response all at the same time. So we're going to be watching that carefully. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you are like, what the crap is a stimulus? Well, I'm going to tell you. You actually know exactly what they are. And stimulus is stuff that we see almost on tons of our multiple choice questions. You guys have seen them already on your FRQs. You're practiced with this. We talk about this all the time when we're taking notes. It's basically data that you can see. So maybe something to this data chart. Or it could actually be a graph, or it could be a choropleth map, it could be a dot map, or it could be an image. Think of, I think we did the agriculture FRQ, where it showed you two different types of images and asked you to describe what type of agriculture is taking place, comparing and contrasting those two different images. So you guys are really familiar with what a stimulus is, or a stimuli, and it's basically a myriad of these types of pictures, data, images, maps that you're getting more familiar with. So what units can be assessed? Right now it's been narrowed down to the first 5 units because they decided to assume what 5 units had been done prior to March 1st. And as you guys know, we were already finished with 1 unit and we were starting our 7th unit. So we've actually already covered all of the information in class just as we wanted to before all of this happened. So you guys are already prepared. Now what we need to do is just review it. So the first unit, just as reference, is thinking geographically. That was the introduction. That was when you guys started to first learn some of your basic geographic terms, the why of where, site and situation, absolute and relative distance, location, the cultural landscape. Those type of things are in Unit 1. Unit 2 was all about population and migration. That's when we did things with the Orbeez beads, and we're looking at population graphs, and we're looking at high and low birth rates and death rates. We talked about the demographic transition model, the epidemiological transition model, and how those compare. We learned about what states are going to have different levels of development based on their population. Migration, we talked about where people are going and where they're coming from. We talked about push and pull factors. We talked about forced migration, volunteer migration, step migration, intervening obstacles, and what's going to cause people to stay or cause people to move. And then, of course, the different levels of or different time periods when people were moving across the earth from the different geographic hearths. Culture. Culture was when it was 3 chapters. We first learned about indigenous and pop culture, all of the different types of diffusion. So you have relocation, contagious, hierarchical, I'm drawing a blank, but I know that so those are the different types of expansion, diffusion. There's one more that I'm not remembering. Then we talked about language. We talked about the big language tree and where most people are, well, for us, we were focusing on Indo-European language trees, how there's over 7,000 different languages on Earth, where they're spoken, what's the most popular. We also heard the term lingua franca, which is basically a language that people are forced to adapt in order to have interaction, whether it's social interaction, just being able to communicate, political trade agreements, different governments need to be able to communicate. So think to yourself, what are some of the lingua francas? And let's see. Then as part of culture, we spent just a tiny bit of time on religion. I know you guys were interested in learning more about what the different religions were, and that's still on my radar to kind of let you guys go back and dive in on some of that. But we were looking about what ethnic religion is, which means that can you fill in the blank? Ethnic religion. Okay, if you said that an ethnic religion is that you were born into it, like Judaism, you were correct. A universalizing religion then is, fill in the blank. Okay, universalizing religion is something like Christianity, where they're trying to gain membership. Now, all of that was covered in culture. The political unit, unit number 4, that is when you guys were learning about gerrymandering, stacked, packed, and cracked different votes when we were playing the games with the M&Ms right before the Christmas break. We also learned about different types of systems, so like federal, unitary, what are different types of government styles. It's also when you guys really realize that countries are states and states are countries. There was probably, I think up to this point, this was your most difficult exam score. I think thinking back, a lot of you are probably nodding your head right now saying, yeah, that was a tough test. So we'll definitely make sure that we spend some time in this unit reviewing some of those big ideas and some of those big vocabulary understandings, just to make sure that we get a good understanding of what is in the political unit. Agriculture, this was your farmers only projects. This is when we talked about what is intensive agriculture, what's extensive, what's commercial, what's sustainable. We also looked at different types of pictures across the world on what agriculture looks like and how all of these play into the different roles of development for a state, all 5 of these units. Agriculture was a pretty fun unit, but again, a lot of you struggled with the exam on the multiple choice questions. So we'll also spend a little bit more time in agriculture just to make sure that you guys are confident in understanding probably more data and images and maps with those 2 units, just to make sure you guys feel comfortable there. So moving on. What will you be asked to do? This is directly from the College Board's website. You're going to be using an authentic geographic situation or scenario, meaning a real world scenario. So you're going to be given real information, real stimuli, just like you're already familiar with. And you're going to be using only these verbs. So we're going to try to narrow down all of our FRQ practice to just using these verbs. So identify, gone. That first easy point that we were so looking forward to having, those are going to be gone because, as I'm sure some of you have heard, the whole idea with this being taken at home is that you'll have access to notes. So they're going to want to eliminate that, that feature for you. So describe. This is the details. This is the details. So your responses are going to need to have length right away. It's not going to be a simple hurry and tell me what you see in this image, define what subsistence agriculture is. That's not going to happen. It's going to say subsistence agriculture found somewhere can be described as what, and then you're going to be telling me where you would see it, an example of it, and how it could be applied. Explain. These are the because statements. For example, therefore, you can see. Those are those phrases that we're looking for in your FRQ responses that show me that you can tie it to something that we've learned about already. You'll be asked to apply the concepts, processes, or the models. With only using the first 5 units, there are very few models that we'll have to really identify. Von Thunen obviously is probably the biggest one, and we'll spend some time reviewing Von Thunen just in case. I think, though, that you guys are pretty familiar with that one. And then it says, as you analyze these things, patterns, relationships, or outcomes, which would be the result of whatever this geographic situation might be. So I've heard the exam is open note. Is that true? Yes, but there'll be a strict time limit. You will run out of time if you try to use other resources. The questions are designed specifically, so you can't just find the answer in a textbook. And finally, can I phone a friend? Don't even think about it. I'm going to read this statement to you real quick because I'm almost out of time. At a minimum, test takers should understand that those attempting to gain an unfair advantage will either be blocked from testing or their AP scores will be canceled. Their high school will be notified as colleges and other organizations to which the student has already sent any College Board scores, including your SAT scores, and they may be prohibited from taking a future advanced placement exam as well as the SAT. So we are not using our notes. See you soon.